So I've had the opportunity to teach art online a little bit, and there have been a few people who have come straight from a traditional background, painting, drawing, stuff like that, and they want to get into the digital world. Digital art, there's so much that can be done with it, and it might be a little bit daunting for those who might not be used to such a thing. So one aspect of digital art that's pretty basic and a pretty foundational element of digital art is that of layers. I just wanted to give a quick introduction to that so I could point to this in case anybody was having a difficulty with a basic understanding of how that works. So, what do we know that has layers? Of course, the two main things, onions and ogres. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. They both have layers. And this might be a little confusing for some of you at the beginning, and you might not like it, but
I don't care what everyone likes.
So I quickly whipped some things together around my studio and workshop, and I thought I could demonstrate how layers work in the physical world, and then hopefully it'll sink into our minds. Okay, so I fashioned this little frame thing out of some scrap wood. This is what's gonna hold our layers, but I'm gonna do it with physical medium so you can kind of understand. So what you can do is picture layers as kind of like a stack of glass or pieces of paper that are kind of transparent. So in every digital art software, you'll find layers as something you can use, and it'll most likely look something like this. I'll have the digital equivalent going on the other side of the screen. So in this example, this is from Photoshop, but you'll see this in, Clip Studio, Procreate, whatever it is you're using. So what do these things mean? Well, normally the first thing you'd see is just kind of a blank white canvas. And what I would consider that as, rather than a layer itself, that's kind of like the tabletop that you're seeing here. That white is kind of this area. Now, of course, you could draw directly on a tabletop if you wanted to and mark up the table, but sometimes you want a little bit more control over what you're doing. And layers provide a lot of control. What I would suggest when you're starting a new piece of digital artwork is to just immediately make a new layer, which looks like this. Boop. So in that layer, you can now draw stuff. You can make a selection, fill it, you can use a paintbrush and paint something. And in this case, let's just draw a big shape of a single color. So in my real life version, that's gonna look like this. So we know that that's separate from the tabletop and it's its own thing, layer one. And in the digital version, it looks similar. Now say I wanna consider this layer as kind of the light range of my composition, and I want to start adding shadows now. So I could of course take a brush or a marker or something and start adding some shading on that, and that will all be one piece. Or I could make another new layer and this time draw in the shadows, which would look like this. So now, even though it looks like there's a composition with light and shadow, you know that this shadow and this light layer are separate from each other, and both of those are separate from the tabletop. So everything is still kind of controlled within its own layer. So let's keep going. Let's say I wanted to add a mid-tone that's kind of between that bright green and that dark black. So let's add another layer, and we're adding that to the very top, making it look something like this. So that's another thing. Whatever layer is on the top is obviously the one that you will see first. So if we brought that bottom light green layer to the top of your other layers, it would look like this. I'll show you digitally because it'll take too long to do here. But you get it? It's as if we took this bottom layer and put it on top of these other ones. Makes sense, right? So what if we wanted to add another layer? Maybe another mid-tone, kind of a color variation. Let's do that. Let's add like a nice kind of bluish color to add some kind of pop art look to this thing. And you can see it's getting more and more detailed and more complex, even though each of these elements on their own is separate. So what's good about layers is, of course, you can now, even though you've been building this up, you can go back, say that this black layer, the second one that we put down, say you want to see what that looks like without that black. You can just take that away. You can either make it invisible or you can delete it. You can change the color. You can bring it up or down. So much control that you have with these layers, but let's put it back. And then maybe to finish, maybe you want to add some highlights, some, little specks of lighting that might make it pop a little bit more. We can make another layer again and add a nice bright yellow. That adds some more depth again to our character. So you can keep adding layers. I would advise not continuing to add a layer for every single thing you do, but it is helpful. Like say you weren't so sure about this yellow layer and you were thinking maybe I'll make it white instead. When you have things separately, you can just, select what you have, change the color, you can delete it, you can tweak it, and it won't affect anything else below it. That's what's so great about layers. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a cheat. Whereas if you were to have painted this on a canvas, like that black layer in the back is pretty deep down there. And if you wanted to, shift it over slightly or get rid of it, that would pretty much be an impossible thing to do. But when it's on its own layer, you can just go back to that layer and manipulate it however you like. So this is also why it's good to name your layers, keep things organized. And of course, once you are happy with how things are looking, you can flatten layers or combine layers together. So in this case, if we were to take all 5 of these layers that we made, as well as the tabletop, and flatten it to one layer, what would that be? Well, that would essentially be this. And we're all pretty familiar with what this is. This is just the same thing on one single piece of paper. So now, of course, we can't separate the colors from each other. It's just one printed page. So sometimes this is good because now you can kind of blend things into each other. You can treat it more like a traditional piece of art. So that combination of keeping layers separate, merging them together, these provide so many options for you when it comes to digital art and opens up so many possibilities. And with it, you can do stuff like this. And yeah, there you go. There's a layers explanation. So hopefully that helped. And that's it. So
End of story. Bye bye. See you later.